Hello and welcome to The Good, the Scaz and the Rugby in partnership with Vodafone. Today, as you can see, I'm not in my usual abode. I'm at the one down the road. We're at the Cabbage Patch, which is basically like, if you've never been, imagine the pub where rugby kind of goes when it's done. It literally is the place people come after a game at Twickenham or after a game at the Stoop. And we have basically met up here because the women who join me here at the Cabbage Patch today are very busy. Our guest on the show, we're very excited about having her here because she has literally left not a single stone unturned, like 60 odd caps for England, various Grand Slams, a premiership title to her name. She's twice played in a World Cup final. And with all that, she's also a bit of a trailblazer these days because at 29, she's halfway through her pregnancy and she has every intention of wearing the Red Roses shirt again afterwards. So it's a pleasure to welcome to the show are you the RFU's pregnancy policy guinea pig, as Scaz described Abbie Ward?
Yeah, that's exactly how I'm described these days. It's funny because thanks for having me on the show. And I did say to Scaz, why is it we've been friends? Well, I think we've been friends for years and years and years. And it's only when I get pregnant that she wants to bring me along. So, yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's great that obviously there's been loads of news about the policy. So I will be that guinea pig. That's fine by me.
You're like a 2-for-1 special today. Well, you plus Baby Ward. Actually, you're a 1+2 special because Mr. Ward is in the background. He's probably going to heckle just a little bit. So we would like to thank him for being our solo audience member in this very special recording of The Good, the Scaz and the Rugby. Someone has made it here all the way down from Buckingham Palace because it's International Women's Day. So yes, you're only watching this a bit later. Swapped HRH for Abbie Ward.
Yeah, Abbie Ward and the Cabbage Patch. What more do you need? Yeah.
It's where Scaz lives, isn't it? Rugby royalty.
Yeah.
She has a room these days at Buckingham Palace.
Originally, Abbie and I had both got signed up to do the same thing at Twickenham as part of the International Women's Day thing. And then Harriet, our manager, called me sometime last week and was like, Scaz, we're going to have to pull you because there's this other thing going on. Abbie will still be at Twickenham, but you need to go to Buckingham Palace. So I told Abbie and her face was like, are you kidding me?
I did ask them afterwards. I said, so why is Scaz not here and how come she got the call up and I'm just here at HQ, normal working office. And they didn't have an answer, actually. They were like, oh, why do you think? And I was like, hierarchy. And I got the silent nod. So Scaz is much more important, which is fine because it's Scaz, isn't it?
Well, I mean, she does have a podcast named after her, which we love reminding her of. And she lives for it every single time.
Lives for it.
It's the 2-year anniversary of the podcast, by the way.
I saw that. I enjoyed your reel, actually.
Well, I didn't make it.
Oh.
No. I just asked for it. It's a bit like, well, I mean, producer Shira, like she sits in a tiny little dark room overnight and cuts these things for us. No, it's not even Shira, I think. It's Craig, right?
All part of my social media education.
It's basically, we will credit the entire wider team. Everyone is involved. But I did remember that it was our 2-year anniversary and you didn't.
And Elma had to nudge me. She texted me earlier with a screenshot of it being like, hello, can you collaborate with me? Because I don't have my notifications on Instagram.
So you know when you make a collab post available to someone, then every time you open Instagram, it says at Scaz_13 has not accepted your request.
Does it?
You obviously hadn't paid the invoice. It's a high price these days for Scaz.
Mate, you're leaving me hanging here. It's literally like I'm going in for a high five and there's just nothing on the other side. But yeah, so thank you for making it all the way from Twickenham, Abbie.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's very nice to be here.
Bristol. We had one of your mates from Bristol on the show just the other day, Claire Malloy. We did talk about things other than poofs, although that was also an integral part.
What kind of poofs were you talking about?
The ones you use in the shower. I stand by this. I swear to God, I stand by it.
What do you call what we refer to as a poof?
I don't know, actually.
Scrubber.
Yeah, maybe. I don't, you see, the difference is I don't have one of those. Obviously, Scaz has multiple. And that's where Scaz gets invited to Buckingham Palace and I'm in the office.
We're gonna create a limited edition Good, the Scaz and the Rugby poof.
Take hygiene seriously.
We are going to sell it. It's going to be in the shape of a red rose. And then we're going to make a lot of money off it. This is my retirement plan.
Does it smell like Scaz as well? It's like scented.
Wow, that just got creepy so quickly.
But that would be a bestseller, I'm telling you. There'd be plenty of people out there.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, So Claire Malloy was on the show. We talked about the Lions. Everyone has had an egg to lay on the topic. What's your thoughts?
I think, yeah, absolutely. A lot of people are saying, oh, wouldn't it just be England? And I really don't think it would be, because there's so many talented players in all the other nations. And I think sometimes maybe they're not able to shine as much because they don't have the players left and right of them. But put them in a team, or some of the backs, gives them front football from a pack, or likewise give some jumpers a hooker. Not saying that the other hookers aren't decent.
Careful.
Yeah, careful. I think it would be great. I think it really would be a mix, and it'd just be amazing to have that opportunity. Like, obviously,
so
to play for England or your country is amazing, to pull on that shirt, but to have something that you can strive for that's one better, it would just be unbelievable. And I think would do so much for women's rugby, because we're making leaps and bounds all the time. And I think particularly in England, there's a real like growing support. And I think it would help the other nations in kickstart that, or keep it going in there, because you get a team which would be so exciting to watch. I don't think you necessarily even have to tour away. It would be great to tour away, but if you had some Lions games at home as well, think about all the rugby fans, men's and women's fans, that would love to go and watch a Lions tour, but probably can't afford to go to South Africa and New Zealand. If you had something at home, I think it would be an unbelievable
Mo made
occasion.
that point, didn't she, when we spoke about it? She said if it was a warm-up game or something. But yeah, potentially be really cool. But I think to your point, like you see it in the league, don't you?
Yeah.
Like foreign players, Welsh, Scottish, whoever it is, playing in and amongst, you know, those league teams, and how much they shine around those people that they've got. You've got a load at Bristol.
Yeah, well, it shows every week when they do Team of the Week now, which is a great thing to have. A lot of them aren't English players. So yeah, I'm all for it.
It would be such a fun trip. Abbie would be a great tourist.
There was actually once, I think me and Sunta, we went on holiday after the season. Me and Sunta went to Ibiza together. Girls' holiday, girls gone wild. And I think I did peer pressure her into messaging Jason Leonard, because at the time he was in charge of the Lions. Yeah.
Speaking to the manager,
saying,
big
please,
time.
can you start a women's team? And if you do, me and Abbie Ward will run water for you. I don't think she got a reply though. So.
Well, maybe this is all as a result. Did she DM him, text message him? Like, what was the pattern?
She slid into his DMs, yeah.
Slid
Instagram.
into the DMs.
Bikini pic from Ibiza.
Whose idea was the Ibiza trip?
Whose do you think?
Yeah, it was mine, yeah. But Sunta was a great sport.
You were like, who's coming to Ibiza with me? You are.
Basically, yeah.
Come on, pack your things.
Yeah,
have you got a bikini? Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Also, I love the fact that you were talking about the Lions on your holiday. That's what you're thinking about?
Obviously. She was actually in part of her pre-season programme.
Oh, shit.
Because it was, at the time, it was like your leave starts when your season finishes. And I was playing in the knockouts and Loughborough hadn't made it. So she was still having to train and I was just sunbathing and then obviously having a few drinks. But she's good value, isn't she?
She's great value.
I think one of the days we went on this scooter trip, I was like, yeah, we'll just get scooters. Sunta isn't very coordinated at the best of times at things, is she? If you've ever
like you on your bicycle, like that's how I see it.
Yeah.
I'm really
Not
good
to
on
judge,
my
but-
bicycle. I would just like to say.
So we're having this great time on these scooters, stop off for lunch, and then we set off again. And I'm like the mum as well, so I have to keep checking, is she still there? And then come out of this junction, is she still there? Look in the mirror and she's just on the floor in the middle of this T-junction with a scooter on top of her.
No.
And I'm like, oh my God, got to go and pick her up, dust her off. But she was all right. She's made of hard stuff.
I was
She's
going to
made of
say
very hard
tough
stuff.
as. So she was okay.
Yeah.
She's good. And if you're ever planning a trip to Ibiza or Maga or anything,
Take Sunta.
Take Sunta.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Claire Malloy, we listened to her talk about balancing being a doctor and being a player with you guys, especially considering how you're going. And it's just absolutely, I mean, that is just so impressive.
Yeah. Hats off to all the girls that have full-time jobs or even part-time jobs and then, you know, are part of the Premiership now, because from what it started when we started playing, it was very amateur. You paid to play. I remember you paid £6 if you started, £4 off the bench, or £3 if you were a student. You had to pay each game your subs. And to
Do you remember that? Was that a DMP?
DMP, yes.
So
and
good.
you £1.50 for your jacket potato afterwards. So when we started then, and the requirements of the athletes or the rugby players then compared to now is just night and day. And it is at the minute, it's professional with a small p, isn't it? What is required of everyone in terms of training, not just the time that you're there, but your analysis, your recovery. So those guys, how they juggle it, I think is incredible. And to be honest, there's one of our values is to accommodate. And I think that's huge in terms of those guys that are doing that. We can't expect them to be at everything. And also it's not healthy for them to be at everything when they're working so hard. There's got to be balance. So it's about the balance, but making sure that they're still getting stuff out of it. They're still enjoying it. And yeah, it works for the team.
It's really interesting that you talk about professionalism, because that's what struck me about this whole pregnant parent and adoption leave policy story that has intersected with you announcing that you're expecting. The reason it is so topical, the reason it is such a big story is because I guess in the past people would just wait or assume that having a child means you're done. Yeah. What made you think, do you know what? Doesn't mean anything. I can do it now. I don't have to wait. I can come back.
It's no stubbornness. I think that's been the thing. People have put it off to the end of their career, or they've stopped their career early. I don't think that's the case anymore. The timing in terms of them announcing it, near enough the same time that me and Dave announced that we were expecting, you couldn't have written it. It wasn't planned that way, but...
Did you know that it was in the works?
Yeah. So I was very confident in that. I knew things were going on behind the scenes over the past probably year and a half.
Yeah, quite a long time it's been going, hasn't it?
And not just that, I knew that they were working with players as well. So they had like a little player sounding board that were working with the staff behind the scenes. And I think the really important thing is they were speaking to other nations and other sports and finding best practice. So it wasn't like they were trying to come up with something, and we're still probably going to have to go through multiple like models to get the perfect picture. But I was confident in what was happening, and I think a lot of people were in that process. And I guess at some point, someone's got to try and break that mold. And for me, I've been quite vocal about wanting to get back to playing and being pretty ambitious of that. We'll see whether that naivety is, I'm just like, yeah, sweet, it'll be fine. But I want to do it for myself, but I also want to show all the other girls coming through that they can do it. And it's not like a choice anymore, like one or the other. You can do both, so it shouldn't stop you. We'll see how easy it is, but yeah.
And hopefully then in the future, when people do get pregnant, it's not a surprise. It's not like, oh my God, such and such is pregnant.
I think that's the really weird thing at the moment, because there's so much media on it and such a spotlight on it. And I find it a little bit bizarre. Because I'm like, this shouldn't be news. It shouldn't be news that someone's having a baby. Like, it isn't in the men's world. It isn't in almost every other sphere of life. But it is in professional women's sport. And that's because it's so unusual, or people haven't been able to do it, or it's such a momentous thing in their career. So I want to get to the point where it's not news. People just are like, oh, amazing, like, congratulations. But it's just like, oh, we know exactly they're just going to carry on training, or if they choose to, if they choose not to, also, like, great. But there's the option, I think.
Some people have babies that are not planned. But obviously when you announced yours, everyone went, Yes, I have to ask. Because everyone's like, wait, she just played at the World Cup. Didn't she just play at... Yes, she just played at the World Cup and she's having a baby. Did you look at it? Was the postponement of the World Cup something that inconvenienced you? Like, how long had you guys been talking about starting a family? And does the fact that you only have 3 years until the next World Cup factor into it? Where you were like, okay, let's go.
Great question.
Like, how much planning goes into this?
Because I'm sure for some people, loads of planning. And also, it's... a lot of people know it's not that simple. It can be really difficult. I think we were just so lucky and fortunate with timing. Honestly, you couldn't have... The fact that I'll be, ready for pre-season. Brilliant. I can't wait. So hopefully my aim is to be back for the first game of the Premiership, because it's moved November. So
yeah,
that is the plan.
Have you spoken to others that have done it? Obviously, you got Debs at Bristol, Katie Mack, etc. Because I love the fact that you're like, I'll be ready for pre-season. But
you know what? It really
ignorance
depends
is so bliss, isn't it?
Ignorance is bliss, and I quite like that. I'm just like, yeah, I'll be fine. You know, speaking to someone like Debs, she's like, yeah, no worries. But she's just a machine.
She's a machine.
Now, I'm not saying Katie Daly McLean isn't a machine, but I caught up with her on the weekend and she went, yeah, good luck, mate.
But she wasn't actively playing pre or trying to get back, was she?
No, I think she was really
was
enjoying
retired
her
life,
retirement, wasn't she?
Really enjoying it.
Yeah, because my training hasn't changed too much. I'm still training full time. I've picked up an extra day's worth of training. So I'm actually kind of doing something 5 out of 7 days as opposed to like 4. So my plan is to keep doing that as long as I can until literally I'm about to pop if my body allows.
Yeah.
And then, get back into it straight away. And they're just going to come with me. Ball in one hand, baby in the other, and we'll see how it goes.
Ball in one hand.
Stay tuned.
Baby in the other. There we go. That's the code. We're done here. Okay, we can all go home now. Thank you very much. Abbie Ward, ladies and gentlemen. Brilliant. Absolutely. I love this. It's so empowering. It's honestly, I think in most people's line of work, there is a policy for maternity leave and basically how you go off and then how it works. How does it work when the tools of your trade is your body? I mean, that's why it's newsworthy, because what happens on board is what happens to you as an athlete. I mean, all of these things are tied in so closely together, which is why all of us are going, so now? So when you fall pregnant, how long do you wait until you start actually going through the motions at work now, according to this policy? Do you turn up at like 6 weeks or 12 weeks, or how does that work? And then from there, structurally, do you have assessments? Do people ask you questions?
Yeah. So I was very lucky because Dave is my head coach and my husband. So he knew more or less straight away. I can imagine that being more difficult a conversation for other people, because I felt actually a lot of pressure to announce it, because I think people were starting to think, why isn't Abbie playing? And those that I was training with at Bears saw me training every day, really hard, no different. I just wasn't doing contact. And I think, there's a few white lies about I've had a previous like hip/pelvic injury. So that every now and then flares up. So I could just say, oh, it's that. And everyone was like, yeah, sweet. Didn't think anything different. It was those people that didn't see the training that I was doing, because I'm not always posting in the gym, Instagramming, just saw that I was absent from a team sheet, that were like, oh, mate, are you injured? How are you getting on? And they were kind of asking because they're excited, but also because they want you to say. And I think they'd kind of second guess. So I felt a lot of pressure to say, but I wanted to make sure I did so on my terms. I'm so lucky in that the setup that I have at club is amazing, S&C and physios. So they knew earlier on than maybe you would normally tell your colleagues and stuff at work, just to enable me to adapt sessions and make sure that I had the right care and stuff. And then I also wanted to make sure that I spoke to mids kind of early as possible, just because I know how much work goes into the planning and prep of Six Nations. And I knew, obviously, post-World Cup, all the reviews done post-Christmas, that would be their main focus. And I think for the team, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't being written into any of that, so that they could already think, about the callers and just options. And I just didn't want to waste their time in terms of planning. But yeah, I don't think there is set things you have to do. Risk assessment is the most boring hour of your life.
She spent a lot of time with HR recently.
I messaged Scaz after it, that is an hour I'll never get back.
What do they ask? I mean,
it's like policy, isn't it? You have to do. I mean, to be fair, there are a few maternity policies. Certainly, on paper, it looks brilliant.
Yeah.
Obviously, Abbie's going to live it and probably, hopefully, change it for everybody else for the better in terms of the practicalities of it. But yeah, I think, hopefully it's going to be an unreal thing. But one of the things is the risk assessment, talking to HR. Obviously, I think as an organisation, they have to tick a hell of a lot of boxes, don't they? Yeah. And this is one of the boxes. But obviously, she's not sat at a desk. It's not a normal, probably employee HR assessment.
So most of like maternity risk assessments will be like, can you change the desk height and the seat height? Are you working with laptops? How much of a risk is this to you? And I'm there thinking, do you have to lift heavy objects? Yes, every day. Can we not do that? No, I will continue to do that. So those, I'd say, are necessary evils. But I think, as you said, the maternity policy in general is great. I think one of the best things about it is, following the birth, you can bring your baby with you if you are touring or if you have camps and games along with a carer to look after them. So whether that's Dave or my mum or your auntie or someone. So if you go to South Africa for 3 weeks, they could come with you and have someone there to look after them. So you can concentrate on rugby, be on the pitch, be doing your job, but then afterwards you have that time. So I think that's amazing. It's what other countries are doing. So it's great to be able to take that and hopefully lead with that.
We were chatting about it the other day as well, weren't we? Almost like desensitizing us to having children around. Because I think it would be, we're ad-libbing here, but I think it'd be amazing. Like, how often do people not get smiles on their faces when they see little ones poddling around, or just the opportunity to say hello to a little tiny thing, and us actually desensitizing ourselves as a squad and making that more normal, and having little ones around the place, or staff members' little one. Ash, one of our physios, has not long had a little one. So just all of that, I think if we can continue to push that forward, everybody becomes desensitized to it. Actually, it's a far more, hopefully, enjoyable, chilled environment to be in.
Do you know what was interesting? We talked about the Lions tour last week and a little earlier. The Springbok men's players were willing to literally borderline go on strike if their partners and kids couldn't come into the bubble during a COVID Lions tour, because they were so insistent, many of them, on the fact that my wife and kids can be here is what helps me perform. Like, that's the thing. That's where I fill my cup. That's my why as a player.
It's huge. And I think there's that the men's side probably were the people that looked at the announcement and how much press it had and thought, why is this a big thing? Because it's so normal in the men's environment. And you see now, after the games at Twickenham, there's so many pictures and videos of all the guys bringing their kids on the pitch, which is amazing. And it's just normal. And I think it's crazy that in the 2 squads I'm involved with, only one person has a child. And it's because there isn't the support to be able to do that. There isn't, it isn't an option. So I think it'll be good. I think the first time there's a screaming baby, people might be a bit like, do we really, like, what? I'm trying to recover. But like you said, then it'll become normal. Then it'll just become like the girls have their kids in and their partners. And that's what it's about, because that's what rugby's about. That's why we all get involved, dragged along with, parents or siblings to rugby clubs. And I think that's just a part that's really missing from the elite women's side, is that family environment. So we want to try and encourage it as much as possible.
It's a bit like how I was chatting to producer Shira earlier, and Oliver is almost part of the Marley Packer brand now. I mean, when people think Marley Packer, they think Oliver, because she talks about him all the time.
Yeah.
That's the level of relatability that also people bring to the sport, is because I might not identify with Marley, who's an unstoppable warrior on the pitch, but I might have a kid same age as Oliver, and I just look at her and go,
yeah,
wow.
And the other thing is, Marley talks a lot about how Oliver has made her a better rugby player. Yeah. And that's where you speak about the South African team saying, this makes us better rugby players, this helps us recover, this is part of who we are and why we're doing what we do. Everyone talks about what is your why. If you don't have one, or if it's not there to see, or you can't engage in it, it's really tough. Like when we're in camps for so long and we're just, previously it's been like we've been cut off completely from friends and family, which isn't the case now and is getting better, but we can still definitely push it. But I think Marley's an incredible role model, and I see what she's got, and I'd love to be able to share that with my kids in the future.
So how much guinea pigging is there going to be? How much is this thing still going to shift and move and adjust according to your experience? Like, is there a review? How does this work? Do you chair a committee?
She'd be a great chair. No, side note, but you would
the chair that only the chair speaks.
Chair's the talking stick and everyone listens.
Everyone listens to me. I think there's a really good base policy. I think it has to change because every individual is going to be different. So it can't be static and it can't be one mold fits all, because also some people will want to come back to playing. Some people might not. Some people will be able to train all the way through. Some people might not. So you've got to be able to adapt it. And then there will, because there's not loads of research and there's not loads of examples within elite women's sport and people that have been professional and training throughout, there's going to be a lot of just learning. And like I quite happily said to the physios and S&Cs, I was like, if you need to write anything up, do so. If it's going to help the next person that comes along, let's do it. Because I think, and they've said, your plan and your training will probably be the most conservative. And then in a few years, it'll be like, oh no, we can do all this other stuff because that's how we do. We learn. Like my program, my S&C from a few months ago has already adapted and changed loads to now, because I'm like, actually, we don't have to be so conservative here. I can push myself more there. And that comes from them, their understanding and research, but then my understanding of how my body feels. And so, yeah, I don't think it'll ever be set in stone, but it's important that as players, we challenge it if we don't feel comfortable, or we help kind of enact that change.
And hopefully the more people that go through this, the more individualism, if that's the right word, we can put with it as well. Because like Abbie says, some people may want their child to come into camp if they come back. Some people might not, because it's a distraction or they see it as a positive thing. Like everybody is going to be completely different with it. So kind of having the policy, yes, and it's a brilliant one, but then I guess being a bit flexible to everybody's individual bits.
And I think we've obviously looked at different policies that are world leading, but we'll find ways to lift ours to then be the front runner. Like we've got a great policy as it is, but we'll probably find areas that we can do more or just change it and uplift and then we can really be world leading in that area. But it'll take, I think, a bit of time.
How long have we now been talking to a pregnant lady? We haven't touched on cravings once. Is there something that, like, are you eating chalk or do you crave like cut grass or something weird? Like
some women, from reading things, have like concrete and stuff. But I always think...
What, crave concrete?
Yeah, and we'll eat it. But I always think, as much as you crave something like that, surely...
It never gets to the point where you actually put it in your mouth.
And it can't be good for the baby.
And coal and... So, no, I've not had any cravings. If anything, I've had, like, aversions. I really struggled with any liquids to begin with. Like water, I still can't drink. So... And you, especially as an athlete, where you're drinking water all the time, all day, every day.
This one with her water bottle.
Constantly with the Yeti bowl.
Sorry, we're not allowed to mention sponsors here.
She gets separation anxiety when someone tries to take that off her.
Yeah, so that was really tough for me at the beginning. So yeah, no cravings so far. I think
I'd develop a craving for like cake. I think I would.
Yeah, I mean, I say no cravings, but I do love chocolate.
100%.
And I might have had a couple of McFlurries recently.
Was like rolling her eyes at me. A couple of McFlurries.
Couple of McFlurries. Nothing major, just some ice cream.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's actually snowing outside, but you're craving ice cream. That's weird.
It did scare me a little bit though when I stood on the scales, because we're so used to tracking our weight. And normally you're like, yes. For me, I'm like, I've gained a kilo. But then, especially when I went over the 90 kegs mark, I was like, oh God.
That's a landmark, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it is. And everyone's like, Abbie, you're growing a baby. It's fine. You're meant to put on weight. But I'm just thinking, when you have to lift someone sometimes that's like heavy, I'm like, I hope I don't turn into that person that's still over 90 kilos. And they're like, can we put her in the back line? We can't have her in the line out or something.
That's a really relatable Because I'm sure every woman who's gone through pregnancy and looked at the scale just once or twice, because I mean, logically, realistically, I mean, there's a part of your brain that goes, yep, that's on track.
But do you think, would a non-sports person weigh themselves regularly during pregnancy?
Yeah,
you do.
You have to keep track of it to make sure.
Fine.
But I'm looking at it like it's the only area that I just keep PBing in.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong.
Killing it.
Yeah.
Killing the scale.
Yeah.
Absolutely knocking it out the park. So when your boss is also your husband and is also the person who's in on this from the start, what are the complications there? The most like tricky parts of it?
That's a good question. Dave, do you know?
He's like, do I want to still be married after this? Dave, would you like to? Come on, put up a chair. We've got spare chairs here. Come sit down.
Scaz is water bottle.
Yeah. Don't knock that over.
We have Coach Dave.
Hello, how you doing?
Oh, baby daddy.
It's the first time I've been called that. Thank you very much. Excellent. Cute.
So what's been the most tricky aspect of this whole process?
I think my acting skills came into question when I was at we have a heads of department meeting, and the physio knew, I knew, but no one else knew. So I was like, Kate, when's Abbie Ward going to be available for selection? And Kate's like, I'm trying my best. I'm like, it's ridiculous. She should be available for sale. And Kate's like, I promise you, I'm trying my hardest. And everyone else is like, oh my God, he's really having a go at Kate.
Did you tear up that you were going to do that?
No. I wanted it to be authentic.
Like, are you joking?
I wanted it to be authentic. And Kate was like looking at me like, oh my God, are you serious right now? And I was like, look, this is how we got to play out just for 1 or 2 more weeks.
There were definitely some like rabbit holes that went down in the last week before I announced, because I knew I was announcing. It got to the point where I was like, I'm having 20 minutes on the weekend. To the other players, they were like, sweet. I was like, I don't know where to go. I've run out of excuses. So yeah.
And I suppose a few of the girls were like, when's Abbie coming back? And I was like, I'm going to get her to call some line outs tonight. She's almost ready. And they're like, okay, yeah, good. And I was like, yeah, okay.
So it did genuinely blindside a lot of people then.
Yeah, I thought maybe because of being paranoid, I thought, oh, people must be guessing.
I mean, if everyone who works out with you was still in the dark by the end of it, you were obviously crushing it then.
Yeah, well,
in your first trimester.
We announced it in the meeting, and Dave announced it, and it was quite good the way he did it, because just a normal meeting before we go out to training, and Dave was like, look, the next slide, it came up, pre-season arrival, and he's like, look, rugby world is really small, word gets around, we want it coming from us first, we're really excited about this announcement, this pre-season arrival, and there's girls sat there thinking,
big sign-in.
It better not be a hooker. Is there a hooker? Or like, is it another second row? Or thinking, oh no, like who is this big player that they're going to announce? And then it came up, Baby Ward.
Yeah, so one of our media guys actually got a camera at the front of the room because I sort of pre-warned him, and the reaction shot was incredible. Like the girls were.
Yeah, a lot of people just double taking, looking at me, like, and there was some tears as well. So it was really nice. I think I was so nervous about telling the team, because when we found out, I was so excited, obviously was so happy, but then I thought, my kind of next immediate thought was like, I really hope people don't think I'm letting them down because I'm not available. And I was really worried about that at both Bears and England, particularly because with both teams, the momentum that we'd really been gathering. And so I found like that was one of the toughest things, speaking to certain players and being like, I'm really sorry, I'm not going to be playing. But everyone has just been so great with it, so excited. So that was a big relief in the end.
That's a mad thought to have, isn't it?
It is, but I mean, I was the same. I walked into Pat Lamb's office pretty early on, and I was like, just to let you know, me and Abbie is expecting, and his reaction was congratulations straight off the bat. Like he didn't even think about, and then I was like, yeah, but I've taken out one of our best players.
One of our best. Best safe.
But he was like, mate, there's bigger things than any like rugby, like with family, and that Pat's got a lot of daughters, so he was completely understanding, and like, you know, it was very cool. And even Steve, the owner of Bristol, he was massively supportive as well. So it's really nice when you've got that support. And I'm really lucky at Bristol I've got that.
It's because their cogs are already turning, their future planning for like
I was gonna
18 years time. This like Wonder Ward's going to come back
Well,
through the system.
I did say that my next board meeting, I'm like, hopefully, the pathway at Bristol, men's or women's, is in good stead.
It's now nursery, under fives.
Yeah.
But I think that's something that's unique about rugby as well, in like as a job. As soon as you enter that like maternity, you can't then almost do your job, the match day. A lot of other roles you'll be able to continue doing throughout pregnancy, and you might only take your maternity just a few weeks before, or even a lot of other sports. You think about how Serena, she played whilst pregnant. Rugby's just unique, obviously, because of the contact nature that you can't do it. So you do feel like, oh God, you're out of it for quite a while. And
you could go do some work experience with your new HR friend. You do that.
Well, funnily enough, me and Scaz entered a new internship this week.
It was like take a girl child to school, to work day. Yes.
We had our big long coats on, our hats on. Didn't have a whistle. Did you have a whistle? Didn't go that far.
Yeah, I got sent a whistle in advance.
Yeah.
You got sent a whistle in advance?
She's definitely right.
It's like, wow. Okay. So the work experience thing, are you basically are you taking a leaf from Dave's book? Are you like channeling a lot of his energy, or are you like how in charge are you at the moment?
I'm definitely not channeling Dave's energy. Dave has got so much energy. I reckon if we were both coaching together,
yes,
it would be great, because he'd be like energy, and like the plan, but then I'd probably be like, okay, but the detail and the not that you don't. I'm saying you didn't have any detail.
This is where I find out what she really thinks.
Yeah, I mean, I did a bit of coaching beforehand, before we became professional and at university and stuff. So it's just, I think naturally there's a lot that you input anyway as a player, particularly, when you've been there for quite a while and you end up more of a senior player. And probably my role that I've had leading the line out, not just at England, but through the clubs, heavily at Harlequins and at Bristol. So it's just something that's a bit normal. So it's nice for us to be involved in a camp environment. So nice to just see everyone. And the only difference is we're not running around with a ball, but I'd say our input is probably still pretty much the same.
It got over-egged, I think, a little bit potentially, because I rocked into camp and everyone's like, hey coach, hey boss, hey coach. And I was like, can we stop? Like, this is not what this is. But I think, as Abbie says, the way I see it is we're basically doing what we do normally, chipping in, pulling things out in a meeting or whatever, doing bits of review, analysis that we do anyway, but we're just not doing the bit where we're running around and actually contributing on the field.
Yeah, and I also think that a lot of the work that we do as players in terms of analysis and looking at the details and the game plan and the strategy would be similar to what a coach does anyway. And a lot of what we do and have done over the past couple of years in particular is collaborating with the coaches on game plans and strategy. So that just continues. And like I said, there's been a lot of momentum that's been built. And what's great is because you see so many new players that are coming into camp, it's how can we best help them? How can we best facilitate their learning to get everyone up to scratch as soon as possible? Because Six Nations is literally here now.
Literally here.
Before I let you relax and sit back in the background, I just need to understand what the nursery decor decisions are looking like. Is this Bristol baby going to have a Bristol baby room?
Yes.
I nearly spat my juice out.
It will be a bear cave, essentially.
Baby Bristol.
With everything I ever wanted as a kid in there. So it was the best Lego sets you've ever had.
Normally you wait till they're like 10 to start living your life through them. Dave started, they're not even here yet. And he's like, you'll have everything I didn't have.
Yes.
Which includes branded wallpaper.
Like whatever they want. Obviously, there'll be a Derby County supporter. So I've got to get that in there pretty quickly.
Is that who you support?
That's exactly who I support. Yeah,
The Rams, the mighty Rams.
Oh, you're Leicester, aren't you?
Yeah.
Oh.
Controversial.
Yeah, but I think I think I'll leave all of that to Abbie, and I'll have a overseeing eye on it. I think.
As Abbie's coach, in terms of how she's managed until now, what has been, what have you learned from the process? Like, what is it you'll take from this that you'll now know to apply in future cases?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, and something that at Bristol we're really hot on, and like, let's use this as almost a test case, unfortunately, for Abbie, into like making sure that they've always got a plan, and that I think that she always feels included. I think there's a couple of times where we've just gone, right, we're going to do contact tonight with the forwards, and Abbie's just like, right, what's my role? And actually, she's one of the most experienced second rows in the world. Like, she should be doing parts of that in terms of coaching, looking at specific elements, and I've kind of missed those opportunities. So I think that I'm going to look at that certainly from my learning, and I, as a coach, to use Abbie and use her knowledge, because essentially she's playing the game, to actually plan her more into our sessions. We've done a little bit of a job of it, but probably not as good a job I would have hoped. But we've still got plenty of time as well to work that out.
I think it's been really interesting as well, not just for, we've obviously spoken a lot about the coaches, the S&C, the physios, but for the players too, because they've obviously never had someone pregnant train alongside them, and how they've adapted stuff has been amazing, because I'm still in speed and skills and weights completely normally. Like, there's no allowances. So when I'm doing 1v1s now, where I used to maybe back myself a little bit, now, especially if I get opposite like a 9 or a winger, I'm like, even though it's technically 2v1, this is hard work. But they've been great managing that, being able to push me, because I still want to be pushed in training, but not going over the top. So yeah, it's I felt really comfortable in all those sessions. I think the girls are really comfortable with having me still there. So as long as I'm still adding value to the sessions and to the team, I think that's like the main thing that we want to just keep trying to get.
Yeah, I think obviously at Bristol we've got a pink bib policy as well, where pink bib essentially means no contact whatsoever. But Abbie's
I love the pink bib.
Abbie's is like a double pink bib.
Yeah.
So like, don't even go near her. Like, sort of a little protective bubble.
Yeah.
I think one of the girls who was sort of new went to like hit Abbie, like not deliberately obviously, but like, and everyone was like, bang, bang.
Yeah, so this was before anyone knew. So technically there's lots of stuff that you can still do up until a certain time. Like, you could probably still play, and there's different things that you have to think about. So I was still in normal training. So this was before anyone knew, and I'd just been a pink bib, so I'd just been on contact. But it was funny because I was completely comfortable with it, but you could see a couple of like the staff, like when we told the backs coach, I'd just be running around as normal, and he'd like go and grab a bib and be like, put this on right now. But I'd be stood with someone that was also rehabbing and non-contact. So then I'd be like, oh, do you want this? Like, why have I been given this? You're non-contact. I'll go and get one. Don't worry about it. So yeah, that was interesting to navigate.
But it is, I worked with a producer in South Africa at one point who was the mum of 5 kids. And with her 5th one, she worked all the way through, because obviously she doesn't have a contact sport job. And she used to say, when she was quite direct, even more than me. And she would say in meetings where people would kind of talk around her going out to outside broadcasts or festivals and stuff. And she'd be like, it's a superpower. It's not like I have an injury. And it's literally that thing where this is a superpower. It's not an inconvenience.
Oh, 100%. And people probably don't understand that, or people have probably been more nervous with me and tiptoed around certain things, and I have to be like, I can do that, that's fine. So on match days now, I'll run the water and the messages for Bristol, and there was one point that a 4th official was like, do you want to just sit down? And like, it's great that you're here anyway, so don't worry about doing
taking
the water.
bottles off you.
Yeah, like, and you've not got a water bib on, so no, it's fine. And I was like, sorry, what? And he's like, what would you do if someone like comes off the pitch? And I was like, well, they'll have to watch themselves. I can hold my own.
Yeah.
So it's enlightening them as well.
Yeah.
And I think it's been nice to train alongside the girls to show that I still can do lots of things and still can really work hard. And they're like, oh, well, if Abbie's doing that, then we better crack on too. So yes, it's good.
One last thing before you go.
Yes.
How moody? Like if we had to do
Just
on a
throw pre-pregnancy
scale,
on.
yeah, no, on a scale of 1 to 10, like where are we? Like
With Abbie,
yeah.
I mean, you've got to remember I've got a 2-hour car journey home. With her.
Okay, so not at all.
If the car journey was 15 minutes, it'll be a 9. Okay, it's 2 hours. She's been perfect. 4, 3, really mellow. Nothing's ever too much.
Have you been a little emotional? Nothing.
I think I was probably more emotional before. Like my periods would probably make me consistently every month. Whereas there's obviously been like a few times, but you hear about people crying over anything, you know, like can't find a fork and I just cry, or it's snowing, or I don't know. They're just...
That bloody dishwasher again.
Yeah, is it
the
dishwasher? I feel like it kind of leveled me out a little bit. But we'll see. There's still plenty to go.
I was going to say,
actually,
we're only
Touchwood,
halfway.
I'm not going to speak
on
too
a
soon.
serious, like, she's been great. And I think even, you know, most husbands are like, I feel so helpless because I'm like, what can I do? I'll go to the shop, I'll get you. And she's like, I'm all right. And I think, yeah, I'm there like, what can I do? And actually, yeah, it's been quite good.
The worst thing's probably been the sickness, because I was so sick, and I'm on great medication now to stop me being sick. Otherwise, I'd probably, whilst we're chatting. But I think that was the toughest thing to begin with, especially when I had no medication, because it was just relentless, wasn't it? And you were like, oh, yeah, keep going.
She's on the motorway on the way. She's like, yeah, we need to pull over right now.
Do you have little bath bags in the car?
You know what? That wouldn't be enough. It just doesn't.
Oh,
yeah.
There was one at Gloucester Services. I was just like on the back. I was like, "Are you okay?"
Good services though. Go get yourself some good food while she's having a moment. Yeah.
Imagine.
I think I got straight into a sausage roll after, to be honest. Yeah.
Just come back to the car with a sausage roll. You okay? We good to go?
Because it's not food poisoning. It's just, you know, it's hormonal. Yeah. So, I mean, you can get back onto the sausage roll.
Yeah. Well, the way I see it is I really struggled to get the calories in. So once I'd got them in, when they all come up again, you're like, oh, especially as a person or as an athlete, because you're so about getting the calories in, getting enough fuel, especially when I was still training. So I think that was the most frustrating thing, just being like, well, that's the whole day's worth of eating gone.
Now I'm going to have to eat again.
Like, again, I thought of it as like DOMS. Like, it is what it is. It's not very nice, but you've just kind of got to crack on.
Yeah, and I said crack on as well. So.
Yeah.
Well, we would like to thank you for your supporting role.
No worries. No worries.
Your invoice would have to be submitted as part of hers, but we thank you for joining us, Coach.
Yeah, I'll never see that invoice. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Dave.
Coach Dave Ward, and he clears his own chair.
The baby daddy.
The baby daddy. So here for the baby Bristol room, by the way. When is your shower? We need to get onto that.
They're going to have a Bristolian accent.
No, they are not.
We spoke about this. Growing up in Bristol?
No.
I don't know if we can say no. Maybe.
No, they're not. They're not gonna have a Bristolian accent. Not that I've got anything against the Bristolian accent. But I just, northern tones. That's where it's at.
Deep,
Proud northerner.
I was gonna say.
Yeah,
proud northerner.
It runs deep with you. Hey?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. Northern Rugby. So DMP also sponsored by Vodafone. They're not going to be in existence anymore, and that leaves a huge gap in the league. What do we do? How do we fix rugby in the north?
It's such a tough question because there's so much talent that comes from the north. I mean, even just from Keswick, that's get it in there. Get it in there. Just at camp, there's me, Kath O'Donnell, and May Campbell. We all came from playing rugby, starting at Keswick School, and there's so many there's talented players that come from the north, and at the minute, or there won't be any elite rugby, and that's a huge problem to have. But I don't know what the answer is, because if there is rugby up there, it's got to be done the right way, because there's no point having a team or a setup that is not going to fully buy into it being elite, because you need teams that are competitive. And also the way that it's going towards professionalism, you need teams that are going to draw players into play there. Like, I want to go there because that's where the best rugby setup is. That's where the best coaches are, or the brand of rugby I want to play, or the facilities. That's what's becoming more and more important. I think it's a real shame, obviously, to lose DMP, but great to have Sale in. I think all the teams are going to have to step up. I don't really know what the answer is.
It's really hard. It's really hard. You spent a lot of time playing at DMP, didn't you? I'm sure some fond memories. Most of us don't necessarily have fond memories of going up there to play because it's a long bloody way. But look, we have to have rugby in the north. I think we spoke about it as soon as the announcement came, and Sale also weren't part of it initially. Obviously, they've now got back in. But you look at some of the people that have come from there. Abbie's just mentioned 3 players: Zoe Aldcroft, Sarah Hunter. Like, you've got 2 World Player of the Years in there, as well as unbelievably accomplished internationals, and so many more below that as well, Katie Daly-McLean, etc. So I don't know what the answer is. We keep coming back to this word sustainable. It has to be sustainable wherever it is. You can't just go and chuck a load of money in Newcastle and hope it's going to work itself out. It doesn't seem to work like that at the moment. Hopefully, I think Sale are starting to tickle on pretty nicely, aren't they? They're doing really well. Hopefully that continues. And it's hard up there often, especially in that kind of middle area, Yorkshire, etc., because rugby league's also so prominent. And for me, it's that top bit, that Newcastle, Northumberland bit. How do we get rugby up there? How do we get really good rugby? The youngsters that are up there, because Durham, etc., have a really good university programme, Northumbria, etc., but then they all just leave, or they get lost, or they get swept up in something else, because there isn't anything there. So actually, let's provide something. It's not really an answer, because I don't know the answer.
Well, like you said, there's the players. There's no doubt there's players that want to play. There's players that are probably even playing rugby in the south that would love the opportunity to move back up closer to home and play rugby. That isn't the provision. So we need someone, a club, to say, we want to be that elite club. We want to be that professional club. And I don't think anyone's necessarily holding their hands up to provide that. So there's the players, but there just isn't the provision. And like you said, there's Sale. And I think people think, oh, that's really far in the north. But from where I grew up, that's still 2.5 hours south. And from Newcastle, that's a long way away.
For Londoners, that's tick the box, isn't it? For anyone who actually knows their geography.
I think they think Worcester ticks the box.
Capital in north.
Yeah.
I think having the game at Kingston Park at Falcons, I mean, it's not going to be problem solving, but actually it's a slight drop in the ocean of showcasing some rugby up north. It doesn't, bring a team into the Premiership or anything like that, but actually it gives an opportunity to show the youngsters in the area, hopefully the very best.
And I don't think it is about the youngsters, because I think the youngsters are keen. I actually think it's about showing potential clubs that it is an investment. So us having a game at Kingston Park, selling it out, might get some heads turning, going, actually, let's invest in this, because obviously the men's league has had its issues this year in terms of the costs that are being put in, but what's coming out, the spectating figures, people buying tickets, they're not generating probably as much. It isn't as sustainable. I think you can look at the women's game and say that's growing. So if you do it right, it's an investment now, but it's something that I think will turn over in the future. So I think that might get people thinking about it. It's something that hopefully will kickstart some people looking at it as, let's go there, let's provide elite rugby.
Because clubs also, you can't squeeze any more out of the men's team. You can't make them play more, you can't make them do more. It's just, it doesn't work in a sport like rugby. But if you've got the female side of it, you get it going well enough, there's an opportunity to double what you're doing.
Real growth.
Exactly.
And with the market of the men's game, like what players cost, what coaches cost. Now, we want to change the women's game so that those players like Malloy or those that are working full-time and doing rugby, that balance shifts and people are starting to get something out of rugby. But at the minute, the investment in terms and then what you get out is huge in the women's game. And I think you look at the championship as well and how much money is invested into that. But you go to some of the games and there isn't the crowds, not like the Premiership and the viewing figures. So for me, it's a no-brainer.
Oh, there we go.
Bam.
Bam. Abbie for president. Can we have more of that, please? What's interesting about this season and about the Six Nations in particular is that you now have this whole host of new faces that are in camp with the Red Roses, who have the two of you to lean on for more coaching insight. But it's also probably great timing in the bigger scheme of things because we're at the start of a new Rugby World Cup cycle. So the Prem is in full flow. You guys are doing promising things. There's a lot happening in domestic rugby, and then international rugby is now opening up a lot of opportunity for tons of new girls coming in. What is it like coming into a Red Roses setup? When you came into it, it was off the back of that team having just won a World Cup. How intimidating do you think it is right now to come into this setup for the newbies?
Ooh, great question.
We're going to say great.
Yeah. The difference is now all the players that are coming in, even the youngsters, are in those Premiership setups. So they're playing with the Red Roses week in, week out and playing against them. Whereas I felt like when I first went in, there were so many people I didn't know. There was definitely pressure for us because England had just won the World Cup. But it was also at a time when then all the good players left to go and play sevens. So there was a lot of pressure. But then I also think people didn't really expect much at the same time. Would you agree? You're saying, yeah, we didn't expect much of you.
No, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not agreeing.
Yeah.
There's always an expectation when you wear the white jersey.
Ding.
No, but I think like it's cyclical, isn't it? It comes in cycles after a World Cup, and especially after potentially one you've won. And one where sevens, we haven't figured it out yet and everyone was still doing both. There's going to be a huge turnover and a huge change and a huge difference. And it will be the same this time. You know, we've had a couple of girls retire, pregnancies, injuries that just happen after such a big campaign like a World Cup. And it gives them an amazing opportunity for some of these youngsters. Like personally, I think they all went so well in the couple of days we were in camp. Just, you could see they're a little bit nervous to start with. It didn't help. It was chucking it down the first session, so a couple of those first skiddy balls aren't the ones you want to be catching, but like you can just see the energy that they bring, the enthusiasm, and also the pride that they have in being called up to a squad like that. You
need it. You need to freshen things up as well. Like Mids has used the word regeneration so much in terms of talking about bringing players in, and the start of a cycle is so important. And I think the Prem has been unbelievable in showcasing homegrown talent. You see players that are performing week in, week out. So it's great to have then an opportunity to come in and see what it's like in an England environment and put their hand up and say, actually, I want to be selected this Six Nations. I think the difference will be where I was involved in my first Six Nations. I think it was England's worst ever Six Nations of performance. It was bad. We lost quite a few games. I don't see that with these players. The way that they fit in is seamless. It looks like they've been training with us for years. And a lot of them have been in and out on occasion. So I think it's not quite as like, this is brand new. I think there's always been an emphasis on bringing players in to get that taste so that when they're fully immersed, it's not as much of a shock. So I think everyone will go really well.
Exciting. So good.
Very exciting.
Yeah. And I guess for us as fans and viewers, also just like seeing girls getting the opportunities to play themselves into like real contention is just phenomenal.
I think it's great for people to see that if you play well at club, you might get that call up to England. I think it's important. And also, if you're not playing well, then you might find yourself, falling out of favour. So it's important. It keeps everyone on their toes and it makes the best players play even better.
And like, I know social media isn't always the thing that we should look at, but when you see social media and people getting behind, a Sarries fan getting behind a May Campbell who's been called into camp, who's torn it up arguably for years in the Prem, actually they're really invested in almost her as an individual, as a Sarries fan, then going on to international, and they've been on that whole journey with her. And I think that connection is also it's really nice to see.
I'm so here for like the buggy crew when you make your return, like just like tons of mums coming out saying, "Come on."
Yeah, we so at Bristol, there's plenty of girls that have dogs, and when they're playing, they're like, "Can any chance someone can look after my dog today whilst I'm playing?" And players that aren't involved or are injured are always there saying, I'll do it. So I'm hoping, when I get back to playing, I'll be like, just, whilst I'm playing, can someone? And yeah, that's the plan. But yeah, like you say, it's a real good chance for those people that support local teams or the Premiership teams to then get behind the Red Roses and their players, because it's pretty special.
That's quite a relevant point you make, though. So mum and dad are both going to be a little busy at work on some days, particularly over the weekends. What's your plan?
Dave's just going to strap the baby on the front, like hangover style. But with
is the baby going to have sunglasses?
Maybe if it's sunny. And then some ear defenders will definitely be needed, because if you've ever watched a Bristol game, be that on TV or live, you can hear the shouting. So ear defenders on, good to go. I think we'll be fine.
I was on the touchline at the weekend, a couple of weekends ago, and we played Bristol, and that's all I could hear up here is Mr. Ward putting his 2 pence in. Very positive.
Outside voice,
yeah. Very much outside voice.
Have you thought about names at all?
Yeah, we have, but we're not going to share.
Come on.
No, it's one of those things that is really hard.
So Emily is not on the list?
No.
Oh,
no.
Bit too vanilla, probably.
Oh.
So it's pretty standard, Emily,
Mo?
isn't it?
Yeah, that would be interesting, like unique. Not too unique, obviously. Natasha. It's hard because if you think, we don't know if it's a boy or a girl yet, but if it's a girl, you obviously know so many people. Yeah. And then you don't want to just, if you pick a name, everyone's going to assume, is that, straight away they'll say so-and-so. Oh, Poppy. Oh, after Poppy Cleo. Oh, Sarah. Oh, after Sarah Hunter. So I think it's going to be hard to pick a name.
Okay, so we'll keep thinking of names. Put that on the list. The childcare duties, how does that work once the baby is here? Do you just go straight back? Like, how much time have you got?
So with the policy, there's up to, I think it's 26 weeks maternity leave that you can take. Again, ambitious, naive. I'm going to
positive.
I'll be straight back.
Yeah.
I'll maybe a week, 2, but then my plan is to get straight back into it. You've got to remember, this doesn't mean straight back into it, running around doing contact. But for me, I'm lucky by design in that we only live 5 minutes from the Bristol High Performance Centre. So I want to start that process of physio, of rehab as soon as possible, because it's only going to be good for my body. But not only that, like getting out of the house, like mentally, just engaging back with everyone, I think is going to be so important. So, yeah, a couple of weeks and then back to it. It's pre-season, so no excuses.
You are a wild woman. I mean, that's some big stuff right there.
Maybe we can check back in.
I think this will be like an Instaverse reality moment, where it's
she's going to watch.
You'll play this clip and be like, that aged well.
2 months later, Abbie's still like, maybe just give me a bit of time. No, and I really hope for you that it is exactly that. Like, I really wish for you that it's an absolute, like a really liberating, but also a validating experience. Like one that you kind of go, well, I'm that woman. I can do all these things, which is a bit like what Rihanna's been saying. Like when she performed at the Super Bowl and basically announced her pregnancy there, she said, well, I mean, becoming a mom the first time around just basically reaffirmed what she thought, which is like, I can do this.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like I said, I want to show the other girls that they can too. I'll try not to make it look too easy, so there's not pressure. Because also, what you don't want is for people to think, oh, because Abbie trained all the way through, I need to train all the way through, or because she was still doing X, Y, and Z. That's the pressure to do that too, because it is going to be individual. But yeah, hopefully, touch wood, so far it's been great. If we can carry on this plain sailing, then it would be amazing.
Because there was this brutal quote, in the research from Emma Croker, who said on her return, but she had a C-section, which obviously is relevant. There's only so much you can prod yourself to see if it hurts, as opposed to someone physically tackling you. So I said to Becky, right, come on, just hit me full pelt. And she did. And I thought it was fine, but I just needed the confidence before a game to make sure that the C-section scar didn't rip open. I mean, that is brutal stuff right there.
Yeah, it definitely is. But I also think now where we're at with all the protocols around everything, any return to injury is return to play from an injury is so comprehensive that I guess that would be the same with everything. Like, I've done both my ACLs, and each time coming back, you're like, you never know how your body is going to react. But I think, like I said, because you do so much at club now and you have so much that you have to get through before you're deemed fit to play, I've got full confidence in that there'll be a plan and it'll just be like one stage, next stage, tick it off. And then I can imagine by the time I do play, I'm going to be so itching to play because it'll have been so long. Hopefully I can...
the days of 10
I won't have lost it. That'll be the biggest thing because, you know, I've said I want to be back in a Bristol shirt. I want to be back in an England shirt. At the minute, competition is so tough. Even if you're out for a few weeks or a week, there's no guarantee that you're going to get back in the squad. So it is a big risk taking all this time out. And you don't know if you're going to be good enough. The game moves on so much, so quickly that when I last played to when I next play, it could be completely different again. And the standards and the physicality and the speed of it will be different. So it's going to be really tough. But yeah, full confidence in everyone around me to like set me up best to try and get there.
And there's obviously this thing about, I mean, your partner is a coach and you guys are obviously like deep rugby obsessives. I mean, as a team, the two of you obviously are going at this together. Like you're going, I'm not doing this on my own. I've got a great partner, a husband who understands what it's going to require of me. That's so relevant.
Yeah, it's huge. And actually, we probably had good practice of it during COVID. So I'd done like a hip injury and I was out from, actually, it's almost exactly the same, from November when I last played. And then I next played in November. And when I went out, we then ended up in COVID. So then we were isolating. So all my rehab, which I was used to going in, seeing the physios every day, suddenly I couldn't. So Dave ended up essentially being my physio. And there were times where we'd zoom in the physio on the laptop at the side whilst I'm lying on the kitchen table. It sounds a bit weird, doesn't it? And they'd be talking him through different like ankle mobes or stuff. And then I also convinced him I needed soft tissue every day. This is part of my program. I need soft tissue every day. So yeah, Dave became my physio, but then also my training partner. So I'd drag him along to all my running sessions. We'd obviously do loads of skills. At that time, we were both playing at Quins. And again, we only lived like 10 minutes from where Quins trained. So we'd just go there every day for your 1 hour or whatever you were allowed outside at the time.
Yeah, for your walk.
Yeah, so we kind of been through it in terms of that rehab process, not being able to play, but having to do as much as you can. So hopefully that we can think back to that and take a bit of experience from that. But that was...
You remember it positively, just looking at Dave's face.
Dave did. Dave loved it.
So it's interesting because my husband and I worked together and for the same company for a long time. And he would tell you straight up, he would never be able to work with me in a team this as close as the two of you. He said we wouldn't be married if that was the case because I would be a nightmare. But when you started dating, you were at the same club. So you knew that there was this a factor? Like, had you dated guys who were at your club before? Or is it something that you
Don't
looked
have
at?
to- you don't have to answer that.
But like, is it something that you looked at and you thought, oh, this is actually, now I'm heading for
Had you
trouble?
worked your way through the Quins team before you found
No.
She obviously hadn't, by the way.
No, but I'm genuinely curious because I didn't want to date Richard because we worked together, and I was like, this is actually a really bad idea. Like we genuinely had a conversation like really early on where he was like, "Are you okay with the fact that there's going to be a lot of other stuff that happens alongside this? Like we're going to have to tell people because we also work together." And he was more senior than I was, and like. It was genuinely a conversation we had because I was like, oh, I don't really know if I want that for me right now.
Yeah, I think probably, especially male rugby players have bad reps, right? So I was a bit...
That's it. Just throw him under the bus.
you know, and being at the same club. But we're both, I think, very professional. People didn't know for a while. And even when we went to Bristol, so genuinely when we joined, bear in mind, we're married then. To begin with, I think for a while there were some people that didn't even know that we probably knew each other, let alone that we were married.
Oh, wow.
I don't think they put two and two together because we arrived separately. He's obviously got his coaching schedule. I'm there as a player, so rock up on pitch. Yeah, this is the session. Bang, 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 do it. Leave. Like we separate it. So I think that, and it works well. There has obviously been times where it's been difficult adapting because, like you say, you go from having never working together before to now not only are we working together, but he's my coach. So it's probably the one time where I actually have to listen to what he says and follow it, even if I don't agree. But then we'll have a conversation after. I'm like, Dave, actually, I don't think we should defend like that. No, but yeah, I guess the key is keeping it professional. And like I said, if anything, he's probably more hard on me to set that standard and to show the other girls. And like, I'm absolutely fine with that. Like, I want to also prove to them that, you know, I'm at Bristol because I'm a good player, not because I'm someone's wife. And I think that was something that I was keen to show straight away. I think I had one kind of media event and they were like, as soon as we got married, I was referred to as Dave Ward's wife. And I was like, I haven't not played rugby and earned these caps to then marry someone and be their wife. I'm a rugby player within my own right. But also, Dave is not Abbie Ward's husband.
No.
He's, you know, had an unbelievable playing career.
Yeah.
And now in his coaching career. So I think we like to distinguish that.
But that's genuinely why I still work under my married name. So the other day when someone in our team did travel bookings, I said, remember, you need to book my travel under my married name because my government ID doesn't say Elma Smith anymore because I got married. And she kind of looked at me and went, what? And I said, well, I worked at the same company and we both worked on air. And I didn't want to be Mrs. Maspero at work. I wanted to be me, like on my own steam there, worked my way into my position. And that was the reason I didn't, for professional purposes, change my surname. Yeah. Because I didn't want to be someone's plus one at work.
I think it's interesting, isn't it, the whole conversation around changing names. And there are a lot of girls within the England setup who are married and have kept their names. And it's like, absolutely, like, why not? And I think one of the big reasons why we wanted to be like, the Wards, not the Wards. We sound like the Kardashians. Maybe we'll have a spin-off.
The Wards?
One of the reasons why I wanted to be Abbie Ward as opposed to, you know, Abbie Scott that had built this reputation and this career and was known as Abbie Scott as the rugby player. Like, it was difficult switching over. But I wanted in my head in the future, in that vision, to have our kids, or son or daughter there, you know, saying, oh, look, there's Mum with Ward on the back and I'm Ward, and you know, to share that. And it's actually, that was definitely seemed like a pipeline thing, but now it's like, it's quite amazing that, number one, we're getting names on the backs of our shirt, but two, like, that's going to be the reality. So yeah, I'm excited.
It's so beautiful.
So cute. She's going to be a great mum.
I'm so excited for this whole Ward dynasty.
Maybe we will
One at
have
a
a
time.
Kardashians.
Yeah. Would you like a reality show? Shall we have that conversation immediately?
Yeah,
after
Dave
that?
would love it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but he'd hog all the limelight.
Well, it's been lovely to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for just being so generous, because this is an intensely personal, like it's that thing where people always say, just because I'm pregnant doesn't mean that you get to touch my belly. You know, it's that there is also a boundary here where Abbie Ward, the rugby player, doesn't have to divulge, you know, absolutely everything that happens in the personal. But I think it's really important that you are doing it. So thank you.
Yeah, it's a tough one, but it's something that I feel is necessary to put a spotlight on it. Like I say, it's a personal journey, but if sharing that helps the next person or the one after that, or someone in another sport, or a rugby player that's playing for another nation, and it's a positive thing, then that's great. Let's talk about it.
Let's bring the next generation through. More babies in Cannes.
More babies.
Oh, fun. We would like to thank the Cabbage Patch, Sue and the team, for hosting us today, and for the queen of the GSR family for making it all the way over from BP to CP.
So welcome.
Yeah. Buckingham Palace to Twickenham in one day. I love that for us. This has been The Good, the Scaz and the Rugby, a Folding Pocket production, produced by Shara Kilgallen. We'll be back with more from our friends at Vodafone next time.